Good morning, Baltimore. Good morning. This is Let's Talk About It. This is Chief O. Yep, let's talk about it. You know, there's a lot of issues taking place all over the world. But here in good old USA, and in particular here in Maryland, Washington, D.C., Delaware, all those northeastern states, there's a lot that is taking place. In Annapolis, there's so much that is going on. But it seems like nobody wants to engage in talking about it. All of us are kind of all caught up on COVID. COVID, the governor just dominated everything with COVID news and COVID this and COVID the other. You know, like many other people, I'm just pretty much sick and tired of hearing it. But we know we're caught in it. That's all. We just have to deal with it and manage ourselves in that bombarding COVID and Korean town. You know that the governor of the state of Maryland have created a township. I just wonder if black people can do that. Now, let me get this. When I use the word black people, I understand there'll be some people that'll be offended by it, but let's talk about it. I'm responsible for anything that I say involving black people. It's not saying that white people can't get involved, or Latinos do their own thing and everybody else do their own thing. So let's talk about it. It's pretty much what's going on in the state of Maryland and all the things that affects the African American community, African American, black people, colored people, us. Well, recently, a few days ago, I went to Annapolis to watch as some group of people marched. And they had so much to say about what's going on in Annapolis. They have an awful lot to say about the rising acts of violence and human rights violations and so many things that is happening predominantly in the African American community. It does exist, folks. I know. All of us, everybody wants to just kind of stay on the what is called safe zone, and not recognize it, not say anything about it. But we have to. We cannot just deny it, and we need to talk about it. We need to see the continuous rising of homicide and violence in the African American community in Baltimore City. Our great sunshine city. We need to just continue to see how that is panning out and what can be done about it. It just seemed to me that we need to continue to talk about it. And so we have somebody today. Yes. A great person, in my view, a wonderful brother, one who have ran for public office before, and as a Republican had the highest number of votes ever received by an African American running for public office in Baltimore, in that district. We have him on the air, and I'd like to bring him on so we can kind of have a little discussion on what took place in Annapolis just a few days ago. You know him, many of you do, because many of you voted for him. Jovani Patterson. Oh my goodness. Come on in, my brother. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How's family? How's everybody?
Everybody's well, man. Everybody's breathing, healthy, and good to go. How about you?
Well, we're doing fine. We're doing fine. The kids are back in school. And of course, the mask mandate is just going on. Some wear it, some don't. Some schools endorse it, some don't. I don't know what you think about that, but because you got children, does your children wear masks to school?
She does right now. But I've been having some stuff to say about that. So,
Okay, yeah.
uh,
Well, you recently led a march in Annapolis. Um, can you tell us about that march and give us a synopsis of what that march was all about, and what took place?
well, yeah. So, several groups came together. It was led by the Frederick Douglass Foundation of Maryland, um, to address the rising crime in not just Annapolis, but just across the state of Maryland. Um, but believe it or not, like Annapolis is a pretty high crime city, even though
Wow.
it's only it has a population of about 40,000, but their crime rate per capita is actually uh, like really high. It's like 42 per 1,000 people. So,
Wow.
and Baltimore's crime rate is around, I think it's like 55 or something like that. So it's not, um, you know, Annapolis ranks very, very low on America's safest cities. Like it's only safer than 24% of other cities in America.
Wow.
Um, so I didn't really realize that until going into the event. Because I live in Baltimore, so we know how things are here.
God
But
bless you.
the issues are the same everywhere. It's what we're seeing is lawlessness take place. We're seeing the breakdown of the family. We're seeing the lack of order really just across all areas of our communities, which leads to symptoms of disorder or chaos, which are things like crime, high drug use, violence, a lot of mental issues, instability, depression, suicidal thoughts, and those type of things. So the root cause of a lot of issues are the same. They just manifest different ways in different areas. But
Yes.
when you notice, it really is the breakdown of the family. And this rally really highlighted a lot of those points.
Well, we noticed that during the march there were quite some talk about human rights violations, not just in Annapolis but in Baltimore City. What do what does the group think about human rights violations across the state? Is it something that is increasing?
I mean, it depends on the context, I guess, of what the human rights violations are. I personally think human rights violations aren't necessarily those against well the government that has its place, but the human rights violation is me, a human, violating someone else's rights as far as living, the pursuit to life, pursuit to happiness. And there are a
Mhm.
lot of things that nowadays that do attempt to hinder that process, whether it be terrible legislation, mandates, laws, these things that are going against what America stands for, which is freedom. So I would, if you summarize, like anything that stands against freedom, anything that stands against family is a human rights violation,
Mhm.
because those are the basic God-given rights, that were granted to us by our Creator.
Mhm. I mean, family values is a very critical component of that march because it was said it seems to be there's a crisis in the family values and it is some disparities in it. Uh, how would you uh, connect personal responsibility and family values?
Well, that's where you learn family values. I mean, personal responsibility is from your family. Um, and what we have again is just a breakdown of that family. So there's no expectation of responsibility once we go into society. The first rule, the first government that you're ever in is your home. And if that's chaotic, then or there's no structure, no order there, then um, you don't learn that outside. The first job you have is in the house. Whether it be your chores, picking up, cleaning up your room, having some type of responsibility there. And if you don't do that at home, then there's no real expectation outside the house. Work builds character, and when you have that foundation of building character, personal responsibility comes natural. There was never a time, at least from my upbringing, that I was never taught to take responsibility for, my actions, whether I liked the outcomes, didn't like the outcomes. There was always a role I played in every situation. And that's really the most freeing thing that you can do as an individual, is that when you see, hey, okay, I was responsible for that. I was responsible for this item, and what happened. And that's when you have really control of your life. If you're constantly blaming someone else, you really are a slave, because you're now saying, hey, I have no control over anything that happens to me, and I'm always subject to what someone else says, does, thinks. So now whoever is doing that thinking, that controlling for you, really directs your life. And that really is, quite frankly, a slave mentality, because, you have no ownership. So personal responsibility is key to freedom.
I know when I was growing up, there was mine was the trash. Every trash in the house.
Yeah.
From my cousin's rooms to my family room, every trash in the house from the basement got to go out. That was my responsibility. And the other one that I really didn't like too much, but you had to do it. We had a broom. We lived in a house where there was stairs,
Mm-hmm.
And they had carpets on it. It was my job to sweep all those, sweep the carpets off the steps.
Yep.
And believe me, for some odd reason, it's a task that most people don't think is it's nothing. You just sweep the trash off the steps. No. You really got to get to the the corners of it. And if I didn't do it, my aunt would exactly correct me in different ways. In that family responsibility, as it stems out into the community responsibility, I understand your position on the breakdown of it. Is that what creates a crisis in the community? If the family values in the community is that stems from the family to the community, if it's not applied, is that what creates a crisis?
Yeah, it definitely does, because this is what allows the breakdown in every other area. One thing I like to look at, let's look at the school system. What defines a good school system versus a bad school system? You'll notice like more of the poor performing school systems have less parental involvement, and the better performing school systems have more parental involvement. That means the parents, the community, the families are involved with every aspect of the child, every aspect of the family. Whereas on the poor performing school, the children are essentially left to raise themselves, or the school is left to raise the children. And now let's look at the outcomes that that has provided. It's a lot of mental health issues, a lot of crime issues on those poor performing schools, and there's lack of opportunities really that come following it. So now you've created these cycles and cycles of poorly educated youth with no opportunities. So that really is the crime, or the not crime, but the crisis, right? That's the crisis, is if there's no family structure, if there's no one really looking after and caring for the family in the proper order, where there's, understand situations happen where there, maybe dad missing or mom missing, but when we normalize this, to the point where 70% of Black families or Black children nowadays are born to out of wedlock, or born out of wedlock, in single parent homes, that type of thing. Because we've normalized that, that has created this generational crisis. I mean, the trajectory of Black folks in particular was much better from the 1870s to about the 1930s than it was from the 1960s, which is the civil rights movement, until now, right? So the black literacy rate was higher. Black had ownership was higher, business ownership, land ownership. Everything was was going better in the black community than it does now, when we have this responsibility less culture where there's no consequences for actions.
What outside of the breakdown of family values, how do we resolve that? How do we go about fixing it?
Well, the solution's in the question. It's personal responsibility, but that has to be the thing that people do, right? There's no magic bullet that's going to get us out of this mess. It's every magic bullet that we tried to put in that's got us into this mess, whether it comes from legislation, or whether it comes from trying to take from what someone else has, or affirmative act. Like, all of these little things have dug us into this hole that now we're still looking for another magic pill, another magic bullet to get us out. When the answer is, hey, everybody, every individual, or at least a majority of individuals, have to start looking back within themselves, take the personal responsibility, say, hey, I have control over this. These are the actions I can take for me and my family. I need to get my kids back, my family back together. Men need to step up. I'm not saying men aren't really desiring to step up, but men do have to step up into their right place and be able to take responsibility. I remember there was a time where, because I was following the cultural norms and believing that not that chivalry is dead, but because women a lot of times want to be equal to men nowadays, and I was believing that too, right? Like, if you're a man, like, you can do the same thing a man can do, that when that's not necessarily the case, right? We're made different for various reasons. And I tell my kid, like, my family knows, like, what does a dad do? I ask them, what does a dad do? And their response to me is guard, guide, and govern, right? That's what my role is and responsibility is as a father, a husband, and the leader of my family. And we got to think guard, guide, and govern, right? Protect my kids, guide them in the way to go, and also correct them when they're wrong.
But that pretty much sums it up. What that responsibility of the man is. God had to be the first in our lives, and giving guidance and giving and governing, and if you don't do right, you're punished. That's anybody who have not yet accepted that is not actually doing the right thing. I'd like to move you into the political organization, because it seems that those who run for public office, one of which you have done, that they have responsibility as well, even though they are pretty much the controllers of the external part of the internal family structure. But can we take a look at a brief synopsis of the march that took place in Annapolis? So, and for those of you who don't know where Annapolis is, a lot of people don't, and especially the new immigrants in the state. That's the capital of Maryland. Can we take a look at that?
Sure.
It's the first weekend. All right, Jovani, I'm ready for this.
Thank you for being here.
No problem. We become someone else's to march down, but I do want to, say a couple of things. First, I would like to say thank you to my wife and son for coming out here with us, hanging out. Again, it goes back to the family. We have to. My campaign slogan when I ran last year in Baltimore City was "Bringing Family Back," because that is the true solution to every single issue that we're facing in our community. Where do you learn lawlessness? You only learn it if you're born into it, or if you're in it already. This is not natural. When there's no order in the home, there's no order in our streets. There's no order in our communities. There's no order in our city governments. And what happens is, there's this phrase also too, the love of money is the root of all evil, right? So what we're seeing now is just this funding, defunding. All of our issues have just been turned into a money game. What happens? So when we absolve ourselves of personal responsibility, we all become someone else's project, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that again. When we absolve ourselves of personal responsibility, we become someone else's project,
yeah.
for better or worse.
That's the point. That's the statement. That's if we do not take care of our own personal responsibility, our own family, then we become somebody else's project. Is that where the politicians, for the lack of better word of describing them, because there's so many ways of describing those who run for public office, because they're the great people that run for public office that have the good intentions, and when they get into the seat, they do a great job. So they keep their focus on what they're responsible, what people elected them to do. They that expect them to do, and they do. And then there are those who get into the public office, and everybody can see it now. It goes down. That statement, clarify that statement of being somebody else's case folder or somebody else's responsibility, and those who were elected to public office.
Well, first off, governments aren't meant to solve problems, right? Our legislators and politicians aren't there to solve problems. Now, we've rebranded what they do to be problem solvers, but they're not there to solve problems. They're there to mediate problems, mediate the resolution of problems, right? They're not the ones to solve the problem. Now, if you look at any organization or any structure has a hierarchy, right? Like there's an organizational chart on how things flow.
Right.
And what our public office and public servant offices have done, have what's happened to them is they've been turned upside down,
Right.
where the people are no longer at the top, but somewhere in the middle or down the bottom. So
Right.
the people are the ones that dictate what governments do instead of the other way around, where governments dictate what people do. But because we've now perverted the hierarchy, we've turned it upside down. It's one, it's out of order, and two, now we're looking to the children for resolutions that the parents should be resolved. Right, the people are at the top; they're the parent, and the governments and all these other agencies are the children. Right now, we're looking to our children for answers that parents need to be resolved, need to be able to resolve. So that's the first thing, right? Governments are not meant to be the problem solvers. They're meant to be mediators for the people to solve the problems, right? That's the first thing. Now, when it comes to when you absolve yourself of personal responsibility, you become someone else's project. There's people out here looking for somebody to help or something to do just to make them feel good, right? There's always someone out there to say, hey, look at what I'm doing to help such and such, right? Because we live in such an ego-driven, society, and what that also does is that when you're getting, oftentimes intentionally getting assistance in that manner, their ego is or the desire really is just to control you, the person that they're helping, right? It's not really to solve the problem per se, it's to give them clout on what they're doing, right? So name a problem that the government has really solved. They haven't solved anything, one, but two, they do all these claims on how much they're helping people, how much we're expanding access to this and that, but it's not really happening, right? But they get to keep boosting the government ego, while the people are continuing to suffer, and the people are still subject to them because our personal responsibility has been absolved, and now we're just a project of the government who says they're doing a good job, but the actuality, they're not. So when you absolve yourself of personal responsibility, you also give up your freedom, right? Because now you're saying, hey, they're taking care of my housing. So if I want to paint this wall, I got to go ask them, right? If I want a new kitchen or change this room around, I got to go ask them because they provided it for me, right? Someone's providing your food. Like, well, I don't like 70% lean beef, right? I need 90% lean, right? Well, because they're providing your food, you have to get the 70% or maybe even worse, the 50% lean. Right?
We don't grow no beef anyhow.
You have to get what they give, right? So you're not even able to make those decisions, but they're going to say, hey, we're giving you all this food. Look how good we're doing. Look how successful we are in giving you. But that's not what I want or I need. So when you absolve your responsibility, you become someone else's project. And then let's look at like a lot of the nonprofits that are going on, like specifically in Baltimore, right? I was talking to a producer friend of mine, like in the music industry. He was saying it was a very insightful conversation because we were talking about previously he was like, capitalism sucks. We don't need capitalism and all this XYZ. And then, he started getting into businesses. He started helping people. He had a nonprofit. Then he was like, nonprofits aren't meant to solve a problem. Nonprofits are really meant to keep the problem ongoing. Right? Because if there's not an issue, then the nonprofit doesn't exist.
It's not needed.
Right? A nonprofit to end homelessness is not to end homelessness, because every year the nonprofit wants more and more funds to end homelessness, more and more donations to end homelessness. It's not getting more homeless people off the street. Capitalism and business ownership and providing opportunities and providing a way out, that's what solves the issues. And that's really the definition of a business is to find a need, find a problem and fill the need. Right. And that a successful business constantly does that. Yeah. Right. But when we talk about nonprofits solving problems, no, I mean, I think nonprofits are great in what needs to happen in a lot of different areas. But when we're using nonprofits to, solve or end an issue, it never works.
I hear you. And I hope all the people are listening, because he has made it very clear. Government is not there to solve your problem. Government don't solve problems for you. Yeah, you got to solve those problems somehow, get involved and take the personal responsibility for a lot of the problems and the crisis that we're in. And that's a big message to Baltimore City, the people in the city, that where we have crisis upon crisis upon crisis. If we don't take that personal responsibility, then government will come in and say, well, we'll do it for you and we'll do it the way we want to do it. Like it or not, they'll do it the way they want to do it.
Yep.
And that's what we're having. And when they do it the way that they want to do it, we have a crisis. So that means that our family have to really take that personal responsibility. Jovani, I appreciate it. I think that you have sent oh my goodness, some very strong message to our community in Baltimore City. And we need to enhance that message. That message needs to be raised. That bar needs to be raised high so that people will begin to listen. It don't cost much to listen.
We just need more visible examples of it, people just standing up for it. It's people like me though that do get the biggest pushback from the communities. especially our own community, because we're not saying anything. We're not saying anything that's wrong. We're just saying stuff that is right, but don't want to face.
But don't want to do it. Man, yeah. How about that? We need to work a little harder on the community to listen to bright minds like yourself. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Is there anything? Well, no, you've said it all. You've said pretty much a lot, and there's an awful lot that we can still say some more about that personal responsibility and nurturing the community, raising back that bar, getting that good feelings that used to be part of the Black community, and definitely standing up for, I think you said it's God, guide, and governance. Love it. I think it's a beautiful thing to say, and people need to really listen to that and move that in their effort to take personal responsibility for what we do. Well, I thank you so much, and I really, God bless you. I'd like to move to, let's go to Africa. I think I've asked you before, Jovani, let's go to Africa. Would you like to go to Africa?
Yeah, one day. One day. Yeah.
And a lot of people should take a trip over there, let's see. So can we go to a country that is trying very hard to bring back that they have lost? A country that have gone through some trials and tribulations. A country that existed but were oppressed and dominated, where while they were trying to raise the consciousness of the people there were some other folks that came in and suppressed some more. The country's name is Biafra. I know that many people have not heard about it because it's not an ordinary trend name. It's not something that everybody talk about every day. Well, Biafra, gee, well, what's a Biafra? Well, there's some great professors that have are beginning and really they're just continuing to try to explain what Biafra means, who Biafrans are, Igbo people, as well as the indigenous people of Biafra. They are indigenous. And many people know that in America, basically, although we are, quite frankly, said to be all Americans, but there's only one indigenous group of people in America, and that is the Indians. That's whether we like it or not. The Indians are the only indigenous people. All the rest of us are visitors by choice and residents by no choice. So, by force, so to speak. So Biafra is undergoing some very serious problems, and that even some professors in Maryland school system have entered into the conflict by urging the United States government to designate darn near 70 million people, Black people. Yes, they're Black people. Igbos, Biafrans are Black people, and to really label them as terrorists. This professor, Dr. Sheehan at the University of Baltimore, wrote an article, an op-ed. It's just his own opinion, but it was an op-ed. And when a professor, a tenured professor, writes an article in the Washington Times, October 4th, that took place on October 4, 2021, when he makes that kind of a statement in a newspaper of that magnitude, people listen. People listen. So when he urged the United States government to designate Biafrans or the indigenous people of Biafra, which is called IPOB, the indigenous people of Biafra. There's a link. IPOB is the same as Biafra, and is the same as Igbo people. They're all the same. They may have some different involvements in different organizations and different, agreeing with the Europeans, the colonialists that came to the country and amalgamated the country. There are some that will, there's some black folks that will sell their soul, and they get their little mansions and pensions and live good at the expense of other black people. It happens in this country, in America, and it happens in Africa, where there's 1.2 billion people. So I want to take you to Biafra. There was a demonstration that took place at the University of Baltimore, and that demonstration was designed to send a message to Dr. Sheehan, who we found out is an Iranian. Sheehan. There's an awful lot about it that I and you need to know more about. But he is almost like the Mandela of the western side of Africa, that region. I don't like to use the N-word unless I'm just with my brothers. Then I'll use it. But I will use it. They're Negroes in this world that will do some serious damage to a whole generation of people. And Biafra and Biafrans, the IBOPs and Igbo people are the oppressed. There's more to this story about Igbo people and Biafra and IBOP. A lot more. I like to let you know that this individual named Nnamdi Kanu has been raising his voice and raising the spectra of the atrocities that are taking place against people, the IBOP, Biafrans, Igbo people. Massive, unbelievable mayhem of killing women, children, property, just, almost a genocidal sweep. And yet this professor, Sheehan, is urging the United States government, and I mean urging them, encouraging the United States government to take a trip 10,000 miles away. I'm a Vietnam veteran, so I know what it is to go to another man's country and fight. But he's urging the United States government to go 10,000 miles away and ostracize, corral the Igbos, take their money, get them. This is a country that has natural resources galore, big, long, big, huge. Can very much help Black people in America as a country that is now, when it becomes sovereign, and that is the battle. That is the battle now. So Nnamdi Kanu is the one that has raised the spectra of atrocities against the Igbo people. You got to give the brother prompt. He's the head of the indigenous people of Biafra. Like the Indians in America, there are some people that are outspoken for the Indians in America. And like any other country that have indigenous people in it, there's some people that speaks out. So IDOP leader Nnamdi Kanu, who left the country because his family was threatened and inevitably killed, mother and father, and some relatives of his. So he left. Now the Nigerian government, oh, there's that word again. I hate that. But anyway, the Nigerian government goes out and says, oh, it's treason, it's terrorism. And that's exactly what that Professor Sheehan said. It's treason, it's terrorism, by asking the United States to label Black people terrorists. That's what he did. And what we're seeing unfolding now is there's a 7-count charge against him, one of which is trying to take over that country that starts with the N word. I'm trying. And it's not what it is. That's not what it is. They're not trying to take, he'd never tried to take over somebody else's country. He's trying to restore the ones that they took. Restore the country that they killed more than 2.5 to 3 million women and children. And he is working to restore it. So they arrested him. And there was another country involved in his arrest. Although when he left that country, that is his country, that is his village, that is his people, to go to London, sometimes you got to go to the enemy's territory because the British people are the colonizers of that territory. So he goes over there and he stays and becomes a citizen. And then as the story goes, one day he decides that he wants to go back home. And on his way, he stops off in Kenya. And when he stops off in Kenya, which is another independent country, the agents from Nigeria grabs him and takes him to Nigeria and imprisons him. And then the people that, where they imprison him at, the place where he was imprisoned, the whole region of Igbo land, as they call it, began to raise the spectra, raise their fists and say, no way, this is not going to happen again. That they're not going to lose 2 to 3 million people again. Never again. So as of recent, Nnamdi Kanu with 7 charges. And as of today, the High Court, now if you ever seen the court, one of these days I'd like to show it to you, what the Black man looks like under the British law against Black people in a Black continent. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. With the white wig. I got one. I bought one. I have a white wig that pretty much represents symbolically the white British colonial masters or colonial people. That white wig represents how they conduct their legal system, injustice system. And here you got a whole bunch of Black folks in that end country, in that end country, and they are now imposing their law in Africa against Black people that they colonized. So this young man is saying, no, 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 no. But of the 7 charges against him, as of today, he pleaded charge 1, not guilty. Charge 2, not guilty. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, not guilty. If my producer can produce and what his lawyers said yesterday and today, it's an ongoing hearing and trial. And then I will conclude it as to what is actually taking place after the press conference by his lawyers. I'm ready, sir. I hope that you heard what they were saying, but if you did not, I give you a quick rundown on what the lawyers for Nnamdi Kanu and the indigenous people of Biafra were saying is that Dr. Sheehan is going to court. They are suing the university professor, Dr. Ivan Sheehan. They're suing him and taking him to court for urging the United States government, an Iranian, urging the United States government to declare black people he doesn't know anything about, declare them terrorists. Kill them, basically, because once you declare a country and a people terrorists, you're asking for the United States to go across there and murder black people. Murder them, no matter who they are. No matter if they're mothers, no matter if they're fathers. Kill them. That's what he's saying. So those lawyers have filed a lawsuit against Dr. Sheehan, and this is an ongoing trial. Mandela sued, Martin Luther King sued. The one person that everybody knows that went to University of Baltimore is Thurgood Marshall. You remember him, a Supreme Court judge, whom the university at that time had some problems with him too. Yeah, they tried to kick him out, and I think they either succeeded or did not. The history is in the books. And of course, I truly also went to that same school. But that is the conflict that is taking place between a university professor in Maryland and a national leader of black people in a country called Biafra. My brothers and sisters, we brought to you two programs that have some simultaneous correlation. One that involves Baltimore, Maryland, and personal responsibilities, and another one that involves the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra. And so what we're seeing is that Biafrans are coming out and they are taking that personal responsibility that Jovani Patterson talked about. And they're standing up for their human rights, for their civil rights, and for their justice. My dear brothers and sisters, this is what we're talking about. And we need to talk more about the educational system in Baltimore. We need to see how we can get these things resolved. And remember what Jovani said. Political governments are not there to solve your problems. And also remember, he said God, guide, and governance. That's family value. That's what we need to put more emphasis on. This is Chief O on Let's Talk About It with Chief O. God bless all of you. Keep your family safe. Protect your family. Stop the killing in Baltimore, Annapolis, Detroit, Chicago. Black people, stop the killing of your own family. Totally unnecessary. Totally unwanted. We can't grow if you keep on killing us. And one of these days, we're going to have this segment on the number of black people and children incarcerated. This is Chief O. May God bless you. May God take care of you. May God look after you, and you look out for yourself and your family. Until the next time, take good care. Thank you so much for listening.